that's the Trinity Eye, so forth and so on. But for them, this is their pyramid, this is their dollar. Don't get confused. This is their money. This is their papers that you try to make every day. Now, that right there is also symbolic of Nimrod, this black man. You know, think of Michael Jordan, somebody they're infatuated with, somebody who really, you know, well, Michael Jackson even. But anyway, they use that one right there, and that's their God. The eye is the eye of their God, or the all-seeing eye. Check out their cameras in Times Square. Check out what they say. Check it out for yourself. Listen.
Will always and everywhere have greater appeal than the slogans of hatred and the tactics of terror.
The Commander-in-Chief laying it on the line. The toppling of Saddam Hussein won't only provide security at home, it'll be the first step in a democratic makeover in the Mideast. A question of free speech. A high school student gets censored by his school when he wants to talk about his faith at graduation. He's now fighting back in court 3 years later. And you're overnight on a trip to the hotel. If you forget your toothbrush, no problem. But forget your condoms? Should hotels be ordered by law to provide them? In history, he argued Iraq is only the first step in a massive campaign to democratize the Middle East.
A new regime in Iraq would serve as a dramatic and inspiring example of freedom for other nations in the region. The Middle East can be broken if all concerned will let go of bitterness and hatred and violence and get on with the serious work of economic development and political reform and reconciliation.
65 million adults in the Middle East can't read or write, 14 million are unemployed, and 10 million school-aged children can't even go to school. Now, how are we going to bring the sort of change President Bush was talking about tonight to such an impoverished and backward region?
Only in practice now, a rehearsal, a training exercise. But tomorrow, this siren may mean the real thing. And if you hear it, as you drive in your auto, as you sit in your office, or work at your bench, wherever you are, what will you do? What will happen to you? Let's face it, your life, the fate of your community, and the fate of your nation depends on what you do when enemy bombers head for our cities. They're foxholes. Every precaution has been taken for their safety. They're told to crouch low, shield their eyes, and remain down until the signal to rise is given. Now the moment of greatest anxiety, waiting those last few seconds. Seconds later, the blast wave reaches the trenches. As the tower of smoke and flame looms overhead, one thought is uppermost in all minds. Now it's over. The fury of it had stunned some, but not one was injured.
They just took a face full of radioactive fallout emanating directly from the epicenter, but they're going to be just fine. The buildings have been blown completely from their frames. And yet somehow we're supposed to be reassured by this footage.
Nuclear aid, civil defense, like military defense, must be flexible. It must develop and grow, even as the forces that threaten our existence. And so until men of goodwill have turned this awesome power to peaceful uses, let us recognize the threat to our way of life, the threat to our survival, and let's face it.
The worship of technology is evident, I think, in a lot of the shots in these films that represent the fireworks in the sky as heavenly entertainment. It's like the face of God. It's like the face of God.
3.
One of the Iraqi war where they're supposed to start to do things. We don't know what intelligence is there. We have to be on our guard because of these color schemes, orange and yellow.
But this is going to make people calm down a little bit. Arrests like this, I heard a lot of people vote today saying, you know, well, I feel better now.
Well, you really shouldn't feel better. You should be aware. Remember, we talked the last time about cat eyes, about identifying, seeing stuff that's suspicious,
like
how
what?
to report.
Like what?
I'm talking about as far as identifying if you see an area, and I hate to get the profiling again, but the profiling factor are that these are Middle Eastern looking people that are going to be the ones that are possibly going to cause the terrorism in our country. Hence the 9/11, when the 19 people, they were all Middle Eastern looking. You've got people in the neighborhood that come and go, different people are coming and going, 6 men living in an apartment. Report these things. Report them to the FBI. Report them to the police, because these are the tips that are going to be the tips that will help the police in order to be the eyes and ears, because the FBI can't be everywhere, and people have to be more aware out there, because we are still facing it. This thing's not over by no means, and we have to all be aware.
Let me ask you about
sort of stuff. You're right, though, on other people's land. Look at this. I mean, now granted, this looks like we're setting up for a regular parade, but this has been in place, and most likely this is going to remain in place. You're just not used to seeing all this police activity right here in New York City. Now, I should mention that what we've been doing is we've seen training. Danny, I'm going to ask you to shoot the subway station again. What we've been seeing is 47,000 transit workers being trained for terror crisis. Some have received a 20-minute brief course, others 2 hours long. But what's emerged over the past weekend is there's been some conflicting information. Some of the information they've been given says in the event of an emergency, they are to evacuate immediately and just get out. Others saying they should be assisting and helping passengers. The city is saying at this point they are going to continue to try and clarify that, and they understand how it could be confusing information. But in the meantime, we're just continuing to see a steady police presence, pretty much every. In the meantime, we're just continuing to see a steady police presence pretty much everywhere. The train stations, landmarks, but as we've talked about time in and time out on this program, you can't go 10 feet without running into one of those, so you always run into a police officer. So that's the situation here right now. As you can see, it's business as usual, maybe a little lighter than normal, but it looks like a very different place. Guys?
Eye is the eye of their God, or the all-seeing eye. Check out their cameras in Times Square. Check out what they say. Check it out for yourself. Listen.
We're just continuing to see a steady police presence pretty much every. In the meantime, we're just continuing to see a steady police presence pretty much everywhere.
Bottom row of the pyramid. Look at that pyramid now on the dollar. On the bottom row of the pyramid that appears the date 1776. Now you have to ask yourself, what happened in 1776?
Larger than most other countries. It stretched more than 1,300 miles along the Atlantic coast and as much as 700 miles inland. From the First Continental Congress in 1774, the roll call of the states was in geographic order.
New Hampshire, Massachusetts.
Because that's how people thought of them. From New Hampshire to Georgia.
New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. Maryland.
Many Americans of the 1780s saw two distinct regions in the United States, the North and the South. One major difference between the two regions and the source of conflict at the Constitutional Convention was slavery. In the North, most workers were free. Slavery was either dead or dying in every northern state except Delaware. And even in Delaware, along the border of the South, slaves were not important to the economy. In contrast, from Maryland southward, slavery was important to the economy. Blacks made up 20% of the United States population in 1787, and 90% of blacks, more than 650,000 people, were slaves in the southern states.
There's much difference between here these were some and any other country. Bill of Rights or not. People. Excuse me. You want to pay attention?
You talking to me?
Yes, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to all of you. It's hard to believe now, but all those guys whose portraits are on our money and whose names have become part of our landscape, back when they were alive, they were outlaws. They were dangerous. They were revolutionaries. They were so restless and angry about being told what to do by a king and a parliament over which they had no control that they revolted and fought and bled and died so that they could determine their own future. And when they developed the Constitution, they were still so wary about giving too much power to too few people that they created a limited government of checks and balances and divisions of power.
What happened in 1776? Now, the Euro in mano, the arrogant man, oro mano, the oro in mano, the European, you understand? That was his Independence Day, which was marking the start of the new Roman Empire. The place Babylon is a new Roman. Oro in mano. Oro means arrogant, and mano means man in the Ebo language of the Naya, the Niger. You understand? Over that. That's our original Hebrew right there. Now, that's why they use, when you look at it, it's Roman numbers. So if you can't see 1776, look at those English, the X, the V, the C, all that, and that right there. Now the pyramid, it consists of 13 rows. Now understand the pyramid has 13 rows, which represents these countries. Take a stock of it. It represents England, France, Germany, Turkey, USA, Russia, Italy, Greece, Poland, Palestine, or so-called Israel, for that matter, Ireland, Sweden, and Spain. That's 13. Now if you look at this war against Iraq and so forth and so on, and the sides are split, they're trying to get their confederacy. Understand? Federation or federate, but confederacy. You know what? Now all of these nations are part of the Sacred Council. There's such a thing called the Sacred Council, right? Which is the white brother of the Brotherhood, who make up this New World Empire, or Nouveau Ordo Seclorum. Now there's more on the dollar bill. Now when you look at the 13 stars, take a stock of the 13 stars. Now these 13 five-pointed stars, they represent 13 nations that were under the laws of Nimrod. You understand? These Babylonian laws. You understand? Which were the laws under the code of Hammurabi. Ham is the rabbi. Ham is the prophet, right? Hammurabi. Under Hammurabi, right? The code of Hammurabi, a.k.a. the laws of Nimrod, right? Now later, they became the Jewish laws. Now later, these same codes of Hammurabi, Rabbi, Ham, Kam, Hammurabi, became what? The Jewish laws, or the so-called, Jewish.
Most Christians believe that the Judaism of the Old Testament is very similar to Judaism today. Yet the Jewish Encyclopedia, in its article on Judaism, says modern Judaism and the Judaism of the Old Testament are very different. It says that after Nebuchadnezzar conquered Judah in the 6th century B.C. and led the Jews to distant Babylon, the Jews were faced with challenges to their faith they had never before experienced. Ever since the time of Solomon, the religion of Israel had centered around the magnificent temple in Jerusalem with its sacrifices and rituals. The question now became, how could one be a true Jew in a very foreign, even hostile environment? The need arose for a certain class of lay priests called scribes or sophorim to interpret the law in this new setting and make it workable. In time, these scribes became what the New Testament calls the scribes and Pharisees, the greatest legal authorities of Israel for all ages. The Pharisees said there were really two inspired revelations to the Jews. There was the written law of Moses, received atop Sinai, but there was also the oral tradition acquired by 70 elders who came to the base of the mountain but were forbidden to proceed farther. The Pharisees said that these 70 elders, or Sanhedrin, received a much more extensive and profound revelation than Moses, a revelation which was never written down, yet took precedent over the written law. When Jesus came on the scene, his reaction was to bitterly denounce this counterfeit tradition. Christ said the Pharisees, by their tradition, had made the law of God of none effect. He considered the Pharisees the most dangerous leadership Israel ever had.
Right? The Code of Hammurabi, a.k.a. the laws of Nimrod, right? Now later, they became the Jewish laws. Now later, these same codes of Hammurabi, Rabbi, Ham, Kam, Hammurabi, became what? The Jewish laws. So the so-called, Jewish laws, which the so-called Jew, you understand? Because I and I are the true children of Yehuda, the children of Ethiopia, children of Africa, the black diaspora scattered throughout the world. We are the true Yehuda, the true Israelite, Israelawi, the true Israelite, or the Hadith, the new Israel. Understand that. Now, these Jewish laws, which the so-called Jew upholds this day, are really the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. Now we have a whole thing on the learned elders of Zion. There's so much out there. So many people are trying to get this truth across to the people. But because the people, either they're all into the seclorum, either they're all into seclorum or something, or they're into worldly stuff, they don't really pick up on these subtle, you understand? These subtle truths. Now anyway, now 13 by 5 equals what? Do your math for a moment. Do the math, do the math, do the math. 13 by 5 equals 65, right? Now, Satanael, or Satan, Satana, was conceived, in the flesh, they say, in 1965, and was born in 1966. Now, like the nation, his eye opened on the world in 1966. But we'll get more into that in the forward. Now, the inscription on the ensign is E pluribus unum. E pluribus unum. Alright? Now, E pluribus unum, it contains 13 letters. Check it out for yourself. E pluribus unum also has 13 letters. You understand? Which really means, they say, out of many. E pluribus, out of many. Unum, one. E pluribus, E out, pluribus, many, unum, one. Right? It means out of many, one. Now, this is the coming from the Tower of Babel. Now, they blame this on Nimrod, according to them, but when you really look at the scripture, it says that, and it's people that migrated from the east. Now, Nimrod, he came from Cush to that land over there, Iraq and that land. So that really was from the west. So these people who built the tower actually came from the east. Oh, was that? Read your Bible. Now, anyway, those people, they came together, all those different type of diablosoch, those slanderers, those devils, as he was called them, right? Together, hoping to make one nation under him. And that him, or that he, so-called, is not I and I Imperial Majesty, not his Imperial Majesty, no. That one he is the devil. You understand? Is their so-called God, their G.O.D. You understand? Their Goma Az the Bar. You understand? They are speaking about in the statement when they say, in God we trust. You understand? Because that God, what is that God, whether the blonde hair, blue-eyed Jesus, what has that God done for I and I? You understand? That God basically upheld slavery and oppression and discrimination, apartheid and hatred. So you see the children, the Father, have come to a new understanding, and that's Rastafari. Now the wreath, you understand? The wreath, which is there, which the eagle holds in his hand. That represents the wreath of Caesar, or the Caesars. You understand? The Khazars, the Tsars. You understand? Khazar in the old Amharic. Now this wreath has 13 berries and 13 leaves. Do the math and count. 13 leaves and 13 berries. Now the statement, check out their statement. Go back to Shakespeare. You understand? I come to bury Caesar. ... This here, this
Caesar was a tyrant! That's certain! We have blessed that Rome is rid of him!
You gentle Roman.
Peace! Let us hear him!
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is often interred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar.
I am not king, but Caesar.
In 46 BC, Caesar, at age 54, felt ready to parade in triumph through Rome. The moment he had dreamt of since his youth had arrived.
And then he had the chance to ride in triumph through Rome, dressed in a purple cloak, with his cheeks daubed in vermilion. The cloak was adorned with suns and stars of gold. And underneath the chariot, drawn by 4 white bulls, was strung a huge phallus to celebrate his virility. But behind him there was a slave, who every time the crowd cheered, murmured in his ear, "Remember, you're just a man."
This is the time when his... Now that means that he was going to keep the rulership. You understand? The honor, the one before, you go to the burial, the funeral. That's why they worship the funerals. That's why I and I as Nazarites are told to abstain from that, but to live to the living. You understand? That meant that he was going to keep the rulership of the Caesars alive. And that's what this president-select has been doing.
On to significant positions of power, either in front of the camera or behind it, is enormous. The Skull and Bones Society does not operate in isolation. It is a strand within the greater web, and an important one in America. Presidents are not elected by ballot, they are selected by blood. Elected by ballot, they are selected by blood.
President-select has been doing. You understand? When you look at him, he looks like a Caesar. Check him out for a moment. Doesn't he look like a
tense political?
The President of the United States isn't patriotic, but could it get you fired from your government job? It does if you're in the military, and now an Air Force colonel's paying the price. California called President Bush, quote, a joke, and said the president let September 11th happen because, quote, his presidency was going nowhere. Because of that, he's been suspended and is facing a possible court-martial over those remarks. The military law specifically prohibits, quote, contemptuous words against the president. If he'd worked in any other government job, he could demand his job back, not in this one. The question, is this guy getting what he deserves, or should a military man be permitted to speak his mind on this issue? President Bush did nothing to warn the American people because he needed this war on terrorism. His daddy had Saddam and he needed Osama. His presidency was going nowhere. I mean, you know, look, I'm all for allowing criticism of our government officials, but I do think it's different when you are a commissioned officer, when you are someone who is a lieutenant, you know, a colonel in the Air Force, and the president is ultimately the commander-in-chief.
From the Middle East, an invasion of Europe spreading across the entire world, a war led by a great king of terror, a third Antichrist after Napoleon, after Hitler. A leader so terrible, he will bring the world, according to Nostradamus, face to face with final annihilation.
Nations telling the people not to tolerate anyone that investigates these facts.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th. Malicious lies that attempt to shift the blame away from the terrorists themselves, away from the guilty.
I guess it's un-American to investigate the facts. Let's just call it a conspiracy theory, especially those FBI agents that have gone public about George Bush telling him not to stop Al-Qaeda.
Conspiracy theories, conspiracy theories.
Conspiracy.
Who died in vain. Behind them is a cult of evil, which seeks to harm the innocent and thrives on human suffering.
Doesn't he look like a Caesar? I mean, look, doesn't he look like a Caesar? He looks just like a Caesar. He has that something, that Caesar-esque. You know, he probably liked this when he gets to check it out. Hopefully, but not the father.
And the Yale class books would, up until the 1960s, publish the names of each class of Skull and Bones. One feels that he has to have gone through it. It was required of the society.
Absolute secrecy is also required. In his 1999 autobiography, George W. Bush devotes just one sentence to his membership in Skull and Bones. Quote, "My senior year, I joined Skull and Bones, a secret society so secret, I can't say anything more." The secrecy, according to some researchers, is there to protect the fact that Skull and Bones funnels its initiates into positions of power and influence. In 1977, for example, George W. Bush forms his first company, Arbusto Energy, with the help of several Bonesman investors.
Skull and Bones is a lifelong society, an old boy network. It's a way for members of the establishment to nurture, advance, promote people who think like them, people who belong to the same kind of class, the same kind of elite culture. And so its power grows in a way after one graduates.
This is no old boy network. This is no, you know, I'll pat your back, you pat mine. This is not, oh, you got the same tie as me, so we're okay. This is a vicious group of interbreeding bloodlines seeking to impose their will and their structure of life upon the global population.
This is the worst kind of cruelty. The cruelty that is fed, not weakened, by tears. Theirs is the worst kind of violence. Pure malice while daring to claim the authority of God. We cannot fully understand the designs and power of evil. It is enough to know that evil, like goodness, exists. And in the terrorist, evil has found a willing servant. Evil has found a willing servant.
Evil has found a willing servant.
All of them. All in it together. All of them older than witches. Don't you worry.
Stadium. Walking to a specially built canopy. Everywhere the Pope has been today, he has received this type of reception. What's none put this afternoon. Perhaps we are being undignified, but this is a special day. And a special day it has been.
That's a great spot for my Yamaha commercial.
Church has ever come together. We'd like to give you a brief summary of today's historic happenings. Pope Paul VI arrived at 9:27 a.m.
What is it?
Dizzy.
I wonder. Got all that booze? I didn't eat anything all day before dinner, huh? Hey. Hey.
Nice.
Sleep is what you need. Good night's sleep.
We have to make a baby.
Oh, we'll do it. Tomorrow, that's plenty of time.
Just a nap.
Skull and Bones has produced the stewards and leaders of the American ruling class. The Eastern establishment, elite core of diplomats, spies, Supreme Court justices, senators, presidents.
The Skull and Bones Society seems to be particularly important for bringing American elite bloodline young people into the web and being initiated into the web.
I see the Skull and Bones people as, in effect, the people who created the American character, and they had their character formed in the basement of this strange tomb of Skull and Bones.
The reason that it is so secret is because if the people of America realized what its elite presidents of the future get up to, they'd realize that they live in anything but the land of the free.
Not the Father knows. Now, anyway, the 13 rows, or the 13 arrows, they represent the Indians from whom the European, the so-called white man, you understand, stole the land. What land? America. You understand? Now, the banner above, the banner that's over the beast of the phoenix is the banner of the United States, United Snakes. You understand? That's why they have the snake there, and they say, don't tread on me. You understand? And then they show you that snake there, but if you notice, the body is cut up. Check it out for yourself. That's why they have the snake there, and they say, don't tread on me. You understand? And then they show you that snake there, but if you notice, the body is cut up. Check it out for yourself. Now, it has 13 stripes, this banner. That's above, you know, that's over the beast of the phoenix. Now check it out. Do the math for yourself.
Magazine. He wrote, George W. Bush lives at the intersection of faith and inexperience. This is not a reassuring address, Klein tells us, especially in a time of trouble. And he quotes somebody, says, the evangelicals take their marching orders from Paul, who said you have to work out your own salvation from fear and trembling. And that came from Martin E. Marty, the University of Chicago theologian. The implication is that once you've been born again, you don't have to be fearful or tremble so much anymore.
Of all the nations are with us, and I would say just let them hang them by their ears and move on.
Reverend Falwell, Reverend Walker, let's listen to President Bush speaking last week at the meeting of the National Religious Broadcasters.
We're being challenged. We're meeting those challenges because of our faith. After we were attacked on September the 11th, we carried our grief to the Lord Almighty in prayer because of our faith. After we were attacked on September the 11th, we carried our grief to the Lord Almighty in prayer.